says going live, going live, going live. Is it going to work today? Is it going to work? Is it going to work? It says I'm live. I think I got it, y'all. I think I finally got it to stream live onto YouTube when it's supposed to stream. I'm so excited. This made my whole week. I figured out Zoom. Okay. Hi, y'all. I'm live. There's no one waiting, but I don't care because now when there are people waiting, I at least know how to come on and start the show. So welcome. Happy Thursday. What's going on today? I did my podcast this morning with Trauma Type. It's on his channel. You could probably look up Trauma Type on YouTube. It was all about, I'm an ENTP, so it was all about autism, ADHD, giftedness, neurodivergence, trauma, the usual menu of stuff that I tend to talk about. And it was kind of all in one, it had it all in one place. So it's a good episode to watch. It's only about an hour. And hang on, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to do too many things at once. Well, I lost it. Let me put it on Twitter real quick. Okay. So today I thought I would talk about mentorship and friendships. I'm looking at community, and now I want to like zoom into the individual level. Community is built from individual interpersonal relationships and connections. Those are like the molecular bonds that form the larger molecule of community. So I thought what I'd do today is just go through some of my experiences with mentorship and friendship and kind of examine those particular bonds, because people bond in many different ways. So see the different bonds that have formed and how that contributed to the communities that have helped sustain me in my life. People have, I grew up, since first grade, I was put in the gifted program and grew up knowing I was gifted, and that somehow made me different, and I was smart or could learn well or read. They always said, you can do anything you put your mind to. Anything, like the world was anything I could be a doctor, lawyer, anything. Of course, I didn't want to be any of that. I didn't know what I wanted to be. Actually, when I was younger, like grade school, I wanted to be a priest. I wanted to be an English teacher, and I wanted to study snakes because I read a book how you could study them. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Let me get out of here. You could study snake, like they use their toxin to make medicine, and it fascinated me. I wanted to study snakes, and like do something useful for humanity. So anyway, that was my like career choices as a young kid, and a superhero, of course, because what kid doesn't? But as far as the giftedness and all of the high ability or whatever that came with it, I have always said that my true gift, the thing that to me actually feels like a gift, are the people that have shown up in my life at just the time that, like, just the right perfect time. The mentors, the teachers, the friends that were there, like some of them were just angels that just happened to show up at the time you need them most. And that is my gift. That is what feels like an actual gift that somebody was giving me, that's completely unearned, undeserved, and it's just a blessing from heaven that just happened. And that's the people and the connections in my life. So I think I want to talk about some of those and kind of how it ties into this larger theme of community that I've been examining. But before that, I think we'll do a little bit of Twitter because I have my. What's going on? Oh, can y'all see that? No, I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. I have my share screen powers now because I'm not on my phone. So let's take a quick little look through the Twitter and see. I'm at a phase of my life where I have a lot of intros, follow-ups, other network types of things to juggle. I am hopefully getting to this phase, especially. Oh, that's some news. I talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but I will continue it here. I am registered with the Secretary of State. I got my signed registration certificate for my business. I got my business license today with the state. I'm just waiting on the city license to clear and get my account and the website's up ready to go. I'm meeting with my business coach and website designer this weekend. We're going to finalize everything, and I think next week, maybe Monday or Tuesday, I will be ready to launch and I will be open for business. So this is my first stint as a small business owner. Well, I've been kind of self-employed before, but doing contract work, but this is my first full-time attempt at self-employment and having me generate my own income. So as part of that, I'm noticing I'm having to shift, be more mindful of my time management, leave spaces open in my calendar for clients and different groups and meetings and stuff, and start to learn to shift my priorities around. And that's all new for me. I've never been at that point in my life before. So I feel like hopefully I'm getting at that busy stage where I'm going to start. It's a good busy. I love being busy. I love doing work that fulfills me and feels positive and like I'm giving something back valuable to the society that's allowed me to become who I am. So excited about that. I'm sure I'll talk more about it next week. Yeah. Okay. This thing, P.F. Jung's reaction to ContraPoints, or comment video on ContraPoints, was excellent. If you haven't seen it, go to his channel. It's worth a watch. On why her recent criticism of J.K. Rowling. She's always going after J.K. Rowling. They have this constant rivalry or tiff going. And he made a short video. It's only about 15 minutes commenting on that. Let's see what she has to say. Oh, I didn't click share sound. Never mind. We'll watch you later. Tucker. Thanks, Tucker. Go, Tucker. Tucker Carlson is an entertainer. He's an entertainer who stoops down to levels of bigotry. Well, I mean, I'd have to see examples because everything's bigotry nowadays. So I'd have to know what exactly he's talking about when he says bigotry. He's a liar who would tell people what they wanted to hear just to get viewers and better ratings. This sounds like an opinion to me. Unless you can show him. I'm not the biggest Tucker Carlson fan. I don't know much about him. I don't really follow him. I've had some friends that have gone on his show a few times, but he seems like an ordinary American dude to me. But I'm open to evidence that he's a liar and a bigot, but you have to show it. Maybe it's further down thread. Nope, of course not. You and your fellow Ponzi scheme promoting brother, the two biggest liars on this site. You've currently made it your cause to try to justify maiming and sterilizing children. Total. I love Shamika Michelle. We found a hollering hit dog. A few more views, Ed, and you'll be up there with Tucker. Okay. That's why I like Twitter, because you don't just get the tweet, you get the commentary on the tweet from other people, and that helps you kind of determine how seriously to take the tweet. We flourish in selective ignorance, says Shane. I think that we all have a narrative going in our brain about, or a story about life and the world and like our own personal myth. And I think that we tell ourselves the truths or the lies or the fictions that keep that going so that we don't experience too much cognitive dissonance and dystummy. And so I guess that's a form of selective ignorance. But we all do. It's just part of being human. Part of the no human has like complete objective reality, exposure to ultimate objective reality at any given time. It's all filtered through our brain, which interprets and organizes the sense data, which we take in more than we are ever conscious of at any given moment, and it organizes into a narrative or story. And it's a kind of a predictive model. The story is based on our past experiences and to kind of guide us and orient us to the present and future moments that we might be encountering. So let's check mental health. Personality and wealth. Conscientiousness is positively associated with savings and investments. I'm very low conscientiousness. I'm low conscientiousness as a concept and as an overall big five trait. But if you look at the 6 subfacets, I'm pretty high in each one of those. I'm pretty good at the specific subfacets. So I think my conscientiousness, as with so much else, is situational and contextual. But I do have it on my own terms in the areas that it shows itself the best. Agreeableness, neuroticism, and extroversion are negatively associated with savings and investments. Well, I'm not highly agreeable, so that might be good, but I am extroverted, and I'm neurotic in the sense in that I have the hyperreactivity, so I'm vulnerable to not fluctuating emotions, because I have a pretty steady baseline, but when an emotion hits, it hits hard and strong, so I spike up quickly. But I'm also able to get it back down to baseline quickly. So I'm not like this constant ball of neurosis, but I am less like grounded and more vulnerable to emotional disruption than whatever norm they're measuring it against. So I guess that's all that's to say is yes, I'm neurotic, but not in the way that it sounds. Ooh, Gen X. Wait, what? Another Gen X? What is he doing? You don't realize your life has been stolen from you and replaced with the neo-communist revolutionary mindset. Yeah, I don't like the woke either, but that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Someone needs to shut the fuck up and even lift. Yeah, bro. I like Gaines. He's a cool guy. And take Gen X out of your name. You make the rest of us look like idiots, Cupcake. Well, careful. Careful. Because there's been times when the same could have been applied to you. Boy, pussy. What is this? I'm sorry. I should not have exposed. Y'all just say, I'm sorry, guys. That's not the kind of channel. That's not kind of the direction I'm trying to take this. Everything in this thread is false. Hey, remember when CRT was coming for your kids, your family, your way of life? No one talks about it anymore. Why? Because it's transgenderism. Here's the thing CRT and trans people both have in common. Neither is coming for you or your kids or whatever. Yes, if you read queer theory, there is an agenda to sexualize children, to sexualize childhood innocence, as they frame it, and to get the age of consent laws lowered, because they have this belief that children are born naturally sexual and that should be allowed to express at the earliest age. Like, you shouldn't put any constraints or restrictions on its expression, and it should be allowed to flower and blossom at as early an age as is natural for that child. And that the concept of childhood innocence is not an actual natural organic thing, but it's, of course, a construct created and developed by the patriarchy to oppress and suppress minorities. So you're striking a blow against the patriarchy and disrupting heteronormativity by reclaiming childhood innocence and allowing this natural sexuality to emerge in its place. And that's all in queer theory. And you can read the academic paper that one of the founders of Drag Queen Story Hour, put out called Drag Pedagogy, where she pretty much lays out the agenda very clearly in that paper that their goal is to indoctrinate kids, as many kids as possible, into what they call drag pedagogy, which is a method of teaching and opening kids up to the world that is specifically designed to undermine social norms and normativity. So this is all, you can just take their own writing, their own words that they themselves put from their brain onto paper and use that to make a case that yes, they are coming for your kids. Okay, I guess that's enough Twitter. Now we'll get to the puzzle and I will yak on about mentorship and friendship and community. Mentorship I take to be adults or elders that kind of help integrate you or younger people in general into society, kind of smooth the path for them, see them through various rites of passage that may or may not be crucial depending on situation and culture. But and then friendship I see as more or less relationships among peers or equals. And peers don't necessarily mean age peers, but maybe intellectual peers sometimes, or cultural peers. So don't get too caught up on age level when I talk about friendship. It's more of a particular relationship dynamic. So growing up, I had, like I said, I was surrounded by a lot of extended family. There were always people around. I had decent school teachers. I didn't have problems with any of my grade school teachers at all until we moved to the other town during junior high school. But I'm a grandma's boy, y'all. My grandmother was the central kind of mentor, structure, stability in my life. We for about the first 3.5 years of life, we lived in a small city in Louisiana, closer to Texas, where my father was from. And when that ended, my mom moved me and my sister back to her hometown, which is more like south central Louisiana. It's a very small, mostly Cajun village in the Cajun part of Louisiana called Acadiana. It had about 350 people, and this was early 70s. So I don't really have a lot of social experiences of significance before we returned to this small town. But when we did, we lived in a house across the street from my grandmother, and she had this huge yard and pasture and all these, like probably over an acre of land to explore. And we grew up in the country, so it was country living. And anytime me and my mom I was a difficult child for her. I was not an easy child, I'll admit that. And I brought challenges. And so anytime we had friction or there was conflict at home, I could always go across the street to my grandmother's. So I always, from a very early age, had this safe environment or this supportive environment that I could access when I needed it. And my grandmother was the central figure in that. She lived with my grandfather and my uncle, he was born late, so he's closer to my age. He's only like 8 or 9 years older than me. So he kind of grew up as a older brother figure, kind of. And they all lived in the house across the street on the kind of the family land. And I took for granted, because I kind of had that from almost the beginning, that access to a healthy, my grandmother was one of the few people that treated me like a person. She could see past the weirdness and interact and talk with me like a human being. She wasn't constantly trying to raise me or get my behavior to be a certain way. She approached me very rationally and conversationally, and she loved to sit on the swing and swing and talk. And so we sat on she had swings all over her yard and rocking chairs. And Cajuns are a very rocking culture. That's one reason, in addition to the autism, that I probably rock as much as I do. Our family reunion is like 30 rocking chairs just doing this on a porch. And so we would sit and swing and rock and talk and just until the sun went down. And we had the best conversations. I grew up surrounded by old people telling stories to each other and just sitting there fascinated, listening to the stories that the old people would tell. They had an old lady that lived next door to us that I would go visit. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and for no reason, I would just walk over to her house and knock on her door, and she'd let me in, and we'd sit in her living room and talk for like an hour, and then she'd give me a quarter. Like, I guess she thought the church had sent me to talk to her or something, and I always tried to tell her, you don't have to pay me. I'm just doing this because I'm bored, and I get something out of talking to you. So, like, my whole childhood was just finding people to talk to, especially older people. I love sitting and listening to the wisdom and the stories that older people have to tell. So I was kind of naturally wired for mentorship if it came from the right person. And my grandmother always knew how to support me and kind of let me talk things out and process and validate me, not in a coddling kind of way, but in a very realistic way, and smooth over some of the friction between my mom and I. And then I was also an altar boy, so I had the local priest that guided me. You know, he trained me as an altar boy, and I served under him for a couple of years. And he would take me fishing, and I was in the Boy Scouts, so we had the Cub Master, he wasn't really a mentor. I was pretty self-directed in my Boy Scout activities. We had the Boy Scout manual, and I would just go through it and do the different projects and meet the requirements for the different merit badges and then turn it in and get my merit badge. So there wasn't really a lot of mentorship that I personally got out of Boy Scouts. That more came from the priest and from my grandmother. And then I had teachers, but a lot of them really didn't know what to do with me. They gave me extra work, or like, I remember in the 4th grade, I was doing my spelling test out of the 8th grade book because the 4th grade words were too easy for me. So they gave me additional stuff to challenge me like that, but they didn't really do any one-on-one mentoring. I did have a stepdad when I was they got married when I was 8, but I think he came into our lives when I was 6 or 7. And so he tried to be a good stepfather. I have to give him credit for that, but we didn't have a lot in common. Like, he wanted to hunt and fish and do sports, and I wanted to do books and read and do artsy stuff. But he did try to, I guess, mentor to the extent that he was able. Where the real mentorship came in was when we moved to the other town, and I ended up in the gifted school. And I had Dr. Middleton, the director who I talked about yesterday, and various professors and teachers. We had some dorm counselors that I got some valuable mentorship from. And I guess, do I want to talk about the friendship at the same time as I go through this, make it chronological, or do I want to hit mentorship, come back, and do friendship? Let me hit the mentorship first, because that may take up the whole hour, and I can do the friendship part tomorrow. So I had at the gifted school, in addition to my peers, so that's where I made some really close friends. So talking about friendship, a lot of that happened at the gifted school, although I did have a best friend growing up that I met in the 2nd grade. His family was from kind of the same situation as me. They were from the same town. The mom had married, they had moved away, and when that ended, they moved back to the town about a couple of years after we did. And we hit it off right away. We had so much in common, and he became my best friend through most of my life. And so that gave me, I've always had like another friend or that best friend around. I didn't grow up as isolated as I would have without that. But I'll save that for either another part of this episode or tomorrow's episode. So, um, the gifted program. In particular, there were several professors that I got really close to. There was my literature professor, Dr. Brown. He was older. He wasn't out of the closet at the time, but it was pretty much known he was gay. Although that didn't factor into his mentorship, he really opened up the world of literature for me. We read Shakespeare, and we had another teacher there too that was a philosophy teacher, and he became my philosophy professor at university when I went back in my 20s and did my philosophy minor. So I got really close to him then, but he also taught me at the gifted school. We read stuff like Plato and some of the Greeks, and I remember Montaigne and Goethe, and like pretty much the whole Western tradition. Dr. Brown introduced us to Chaucer and Shakespeare. We read King Lear one year, and I wrote a paper on it that he really was impressed by, and we became close. We would visit him outside of the school, and he kind of became a mentor to all of us. We had another English professor, composition professor, Robert Cooper. So basically, the whole point of this is I had several professors in the humanities and literature that kind of really influenced me, awoken a passion for great books and the Western tradition at a very early age. This was like junior high, high school. Probably one of the most significant mentors to come out of that experience was my drama coach. Her name was Nancy Key. And I met her my freshman year was when she started. She used to teach at the program before I was there, and she returned to teach the second year I was there. And I met her that year, but I ended up not being in drama class that year, and that's a story in itself. But the following year, I was a sophomore in high school. So this is before my sophomore year. And I was in my first play. It was Julius Caesar from Shakespeare, and she directed me. And the following year I was Algernon Moncrief in The Importance of Being Earnest, and she directed me in that as well. And she was a really tough, no-nonsense, don't fuck around theater director. You did what she said, or she would absolutely make you cry and have you in tears. And she did make me cry the first time she directed me. You have to understand, it was all out of love. She had this ability to communicate this deep love and caring for us. And she built so much trust with us that allowed her to have this directorial style, which would probably never be allowed today. But I've always said she was harder on us than any Marine or Army drill sergeant could ever have been. To this day, if you put me in front of a Marine sergeant, do your best, because you are nothing compared to theater under Nancy Key. And it so happened that she also was my English teacher at the public school I went to during the school year. So I had her in the summers, and I had her throughout the school year for several years. And that was kind of a rough school. Gifted people were not highly valued at the school. It was more like an ag town, and very athletic oriented. And there were a few gifted people at high school. We were the misfits, so we all kind of hung around together. And Nancy was kind of our champion and our mentor. And so having that much like interaction with her over the entire year, we became really close. I've mentioned before, when I was 16, I was in junior high school. I was hospitalized for, it wasn't really a nervous breakdown, but it was kind of on the way to one. So it was to prevent one from happening and to keep it from getting worse. I was having a lot of adjustment difficulties at home with my family. My mom had just divorced my stepdad, and there were some changes in the dynamics at home. School had actually leveled off and wasn't that bad anymore. By the junior year of high school, I had pretty much adjusted as much as I was going to and started to make a few friends. It was home life that started to get pretty bad at that point. And I won't go into to the details of it, but I was hospitalized for about 6.5 weeks until the insurance decided that they weren't going to pay anymore. So I miraculously got discharged. And before they discharged me, when they were doing the aftercare plan, they told me, and they told my mom, they said he should not go back and live with you. If he go, you and him are not good together to live together, especially right now. If he goes back and lives with you, it jeopardizes all the work he's done while he was here and runs the risk of undoing and reversing a lot of it. So Nancy offered to take me in to finish out the school year. And so I ended up living with her for a couple of months, the last few months of my junior year. And we would drive to school every day. She lived in the city part, and the school was in the small town. So I'd ride with her to the school every day and ride back to the city with her afterwards. And that was, she ended up, she calls me she passed away a few years ago. So we did lose her. But as an adult, she called me her son. She would refer to me as her son. She would introduce me to friends as her son. I was kind of her adopted son, and she was my adopted mother. And having that at the time that I did, when I needed it most, she truly was kind of like an angel from heaven. Even though I'm a Satanist, that does seem to be where she came from. And she was very fiery, outspoken. She was curly, redhead, and just very fierce. And she didn't put up with crap from anybody. She spoke her mind. She was not the women of today, let's just say that. And I learned a lot of strength from her. She modeled. When I say mentorship, they didn't like sit me down and teach me specific things. They modeled an ethos, a way of life, a personality ideal that I could draw the parts from that I needed to kind of develop in my own personality or compensate for the areas of weakness in my own personality. And so probably a lot of the reason I speak my mind today and I'm so forthright and just people talk about my raw authenticity, it comes from her. Like she modeled that for us. She made it okay and actually an asset to be that. She didn't take crap from anybody, and neither do I. And she would speak up like this if something didn't make sense to her or didn't strike her right. And so she's the one that encouraged me to apply to the gifted college. And so I went from junior in high school to freshman in college. And a lot of that was through her support as well, her moral support and emotional encouragement. So then college, and I stayed for about a year, and then kind of decided it wasn't for me. And that's when I did the slacking and got involved in different groups. There was this little new age, they had a new age bookstore in the city, and there was a little group that met out of there. So I got involved in this little spiritual new age group, and that's when I got into the occult and paganism. And eventually, I was 20 years old. I had just turned 20. It was 1990. And I took a seasonal job in the mall at the Walden Books, y'all, the bookstore in the mall. And it was over the Christmas holidays. And one of my coworkers there was she was about my age. She was very intelligent. She was a feminist, and I had never really interacted with a feminist before, although looking back, they did have many of them at the gifted program, but nobody was talking about feminism back then or discussing anything as openly feminist in orientation. So she was kind of the first feminist that I got to interact with, and we became very close, and we took road trips together. She liked the same independent art house movies I did, so we watched a lot of movies together. By the way, watching movies is a great way to bond and form friendships, and so are board games, and Dungeons and Dragons, stuff like that. Any activity really where you kind of bond over doing the activity. And she read feminist literature. She turned me on to some feminist writings. Anais Nin was one of them that I remember. Um, maybe Simone de Beauvoir. Of course, they meant more to her than they did to me. I was more into the gay stuff. I was a little baby gay at the time, making my way in the gay world and trying to find my gay identity. And we ended up moving to Austin, Texas together. She was moving to Austin, Texas to stay with a friend that I happened to know through some other friends at the gifted school. And she stopped by one day to tell me bye. And we were saying our goodbyes, and my mom jokingly said, "You wouldn't take him with you, would you?" And we kind of looked at each other, and I'm like, "I don't know, are you serious?" And my friend's like, "Well, I consider it." And my mom's like, "Well, let me check my bank account, see how much I have. I can give you a few $100s if you want to do this." And so I woke up that morning not knowing that I would be moving to Austin, Texas that day. But after this conversation, I packed my stuff, got in the car with her, and we both took off to Austin, Texas. And I stayed there for like 8 or 9 months. That's when I got involved, I mentioned, in the men's group, the Gay and Lesbian Youth Center. So I got to meet older gay people, older male gay people. There were some lesbians at the youth center. And so that kind of gave me a very positive experience or viewpoint or perspective on being gay and being male. And so I think having, though, even though it was brief, having even those few little moments of mentorship from those groups kind of helped me set that identity on a positive path. And then I returned to our city and went back to college. That's when I did the philosophy major. I had that professor from the gifted school be an absolutely wonderful philosophy mentor. Probably most of what I do in philosophy today I owe to this guy. And when he wasn't teaching philosophy, he also was a Southern Baptist minister at his local church. He was on the board of the Southern Baptist Convention. And I learned everything I know from him. He taught me so much. Like, me being atheist and gay and him being Southern Baptist was not a barrier to the philosophical principles he taught me. He taught me logic. I had political philosophy, ethics. He taught me how to think about philosophical problems and really break them down to the core issues that are at play. He taught me how to navigate through linguistic conflicts and difficulty. A lot of philosophy, I find, is people get impatient with defining terms or language, but usually when I'm talking philosophy, it's almost always, like 90-something% of the time, it's usually we're talking about two different things, or we're talking about the same thing in two different ways. And once we like refine and clarify the language, we're much more aligned in around the problem than it seemed like we were at first. Or every now and then it turns out, when you do sift through all the linguistic hurdles, that you are actually talking about two opposite things, or you hold two contrary beliefs or opinions that are not reconcilable. But that is very rare, I have found, in the philosophical discussions that I get involved in. Usually people are talking about very similar things or approaching the same issues from slightly different perspectives, and the language is what's clouding and muddying everything. So a lot of the philosophy I do is digging into language. What do you mean by this? Let's define our terms. Let's make sure we're on the same page about what all these words mean, so we can know that our concepts, if they're aligned or if they are opposed. And you'd be surprised how much philosophical confusion and conflict that clears up from just working through the language that each other's using, because we all have our own idiolect that we bring to a philosophical problem, or to anything really, communication in general. And so he was a very dear and valuable mentor. And then graduated college, took a job in another town, worked for about 6 months. I remember I had my first apartment, first car. I just bought a car. First real job, like 9-to-5 job where I had salary and benefits and all of that. It was inside sales for an oil field company, but it's what I could get at the time. And I remember coming home one day and sitting in the apartment and looking up at the ceiling and saying, I finally did it. I was in my late 20s. I think I was 20, 27. I finally did it. I have my own place. I have a car. I have a job. I have a friend circle. I have a life. I am an adult. I am adulting. I am living an adult life like I've was working up toward, and all of these mentors were trying to work me up toward. And I remember thinking, this can't be it. This can't like this can't be the plateau that the rest of my life is going to be. And this was shortly before the AOL days. And so a few months later, I discovered America Online. It opened up an entire new world of people all across, not even the country, but the world. And I met a guy in California. We started talking, and he convinced me to move out to California and start dating. And he didn't have to ask me twice. It did not take me long. I quit the job, gave up the apartment, packed my car, and headed off to California. I was there in 2 days, stayed with a friend in West Hollywood for a while until I could get my own place in Southern California. Bebopped around. Needless to say, the relationship did not work out at all. But it didn't end badly. We were just not compatible. But you really don't know that till in person. So we gave it a shot. And I ended up in San Francisco for a little while through some people I had met through America Online. At that point, like from that point forward, probably every person in my real life, like my physical in-person life, I had met through a computer. AOL connected me with so many people that I would never have met in person were it not for this new technology. So I met people in San Francisco. I met people all over California. And I couldn't, that's when there was a big housing crunch in San Francisco, and I couldn't find housing. Like, it was way too expensive. And so I was ready to give up and pack it in and return home. And I had an AOL friend in Vegas that offered me to stop by and visit and meet and say hello on the way back. So I did. And I stayed the night. And while I was there, he said, well, if you don't really want to go back home yet, you could always stay here for a little while and give Vegas a try and see what opportunities there are here for you, perhaps. And so I took him up on it, and I stayed in Vegas, and I loved it. Vegas was that was my paradise. That is the best city I've ever lived in. It's an extrovert's town. They have all this hyper stimulation everywhere. They have all the outdoor stuff. You have California, Utah, Arizona, 2 hours away. There's people from all over the world. Nobody that lives in Vegas is from Vegas. So every person you meet is this interesting new person from somewhere exotic across the country or the world. And there was so much variety there. I really thrived in Vegas. Getting back to mentorship, outside of Mike, who was my partner, I taught in Vegas for 3 years. A lot of it was at this middle school. It was like a magnet school for the creative arts. And I got really close to the French teacher there. And in fact, after I lost Mike, she was one of my biggest support systems that stayed in touch 2 or 3 times a week, and for really years afterwards, and was just such a valuable source of support through that. But we became close, and she was also gifted. So we had that gifted bond between us. And she was slightly older, I think, and more experienced in the ways of the world than I was. So she was able to provide a lot of guidance and mentorship that I don't think I would have gotten anywhere else. So it could even be like, mentors don't have to be adult to child. Even when I guess when you're younger, it tends to fall that way. But when you're an adult, even someone a few years older than you, an older friend, maybe an older sibling or relative, can fulfill that mentoring role, because mentoring is an activity and that produces a certain result or effect in the person. It's not necessarily an age tied to age, and neither is friendship. So these age these particularly relationships I'm talking about, they're not really limited by age. Although I don't want to veer off into queer theory people and say that 6-year-olds should be mentored by adults that have no reason to be mentoring them. And so she was a valuable mentor. I ended up eventually going back to New Orleans after Mike. That's when I got my job working inpatient adolescent psych, and had a I can't talk highly enough about this staff. We had the core of the staff were the psych nurses, because the doctors would come and go and see the clients, but what really kept the unit going were the psych nurses. They had the most of the authority on the floor at any given time, and a lot of them were male psych nurses, and I learned so much from these guys and girls, women that worked in this unit. Probably most of them were gifted as well. So they were highly intelligent. We could have really deep conversations about psychology and culture and politics. And so I picked up a lot of mentorship. My boss was fantastic. He was this young nursing manager student that he deferred to our expertise and kind of gave us the freedom to do what we thought was best for the unit. So we had a lot of creative freedom from him. And I was very proud to be on that team and very proud of the work that I did on that unit. And eventually I got my own floor that I was kind of that I coordinated once we expanded. And I was proud to be able to put some of that into practice in that setting. And of course, I met the guy in Seattle while I was doing that and decided to cash it all in and come up here. And he was just a few years older than me, but he was one of the things that drew me to him was the possibility of mentorship, because he was just like me. He was highly neurodivergent, autistic, ADHD, gifted, and he had assimilated to corporate America. He worked at Microsoft. He was very successful, and he had been doing that for like 20 years, I think. And I was so impressed that as oddball as he was and as misfit as he was, that he was able to make this kind of success for himself. And I thought that I could learn so much from that, like me being the same neurotype, and that he could mentor me and show me how to achieve what he had achieved. And needless to say, it was a disaster. It didn't work out. But the possibility of mentorship was one of the things that kind of motivated me or drew me into relationship with him above and beyond just the erotic and romantic. And so that was kind of disappointing when that ended. And I took various jobs in Seattle and mental health jobs. And I can't say that I got necessarily any particularly outstanding mentorship from any of the agencies I worked at. I was a mental health ombuds for about 2.5 years, and the guy that ran that program, I have a lot of respect for. I learned a lot. He was very hands off. He wasn't even in the office most of the time. We were kind of in charge of the place and run it as we see best. So again, a lot of autonomy and creative freedom, which is one thing I always say in interviews that is important for me. I tell them, they ask me in the interviews, and like, what do you need to be a successful employee? And I tell them or what do you need from a manager? I say, I need you to be a resource and a source of support when I need it. But otherwise, tell me what you want me to do and get out of my way and let me do it. I don't need a lot of micromanagement. I don't need people supervising me constantly or looking over my shoulder. Just tell me what results you want, and then give me the creative freedom and autonomy to produce them, and then be there as a resource if I need you. And they're like, oh, we like that. Oh, I love that answer, blah, blah, blah. So of course I get hired, and then they do nothing but proceed to micromanage and over supervise me. And I even tell them, like, I said this in the interview, this is exactly why I said it and what I was talking about. You need to get out of my way and let me do the thing that I'm here to do and that I know how to do. And I don't respond well to a lot of micromanagement and trying to control my process externally from people who don't even know my process, because it's intrinsic to me. And so for that reason, and with the culture here, I didn't get a lot of valuable mentorship other than from the ombuds guy. The exception would be my peer mentor. Her name is Beverly. Hi, Beverly, if you're watching, which sometimes she does. She trained me as a peer counselor. She's the one I developed the peer kind of network with, the county peer network with. She runs the statewide peer organization. I'm still in touch with her, and we're very close. And she taught me everything I know about peer support and peer work. And to this day, I have her as a mentor and a resource that I can go to when I need to process something or talk about something mental health or peer related or get her thoughts or her perspective on something. And she has been almost like a rock. And Seattle was a very trying place for me. It really was. It was probably more of a struggle than even the little town in Louisiana that we moved to that was so rough that I had the adjustment difficulties in. Seattle was like 12 years of adjustment difficulties that never did get adjusted. And she was one of the few people that stood by me. She saw my value and potential. She helped me develop my peer ability. She directed me to opportunities where I could utilize them and put them into practice so they would grow and develop more. And so I'm just really grateful to people like her. She was like a model mentor. And so these are the people that I'm talking about that I'm so fortunate to have drawn into my. They saw something in me that I did not see in myself, and they were able to help bring it out of me so that I could use it to give something back to the world and society, which I'm really big on. Like, that's my whole mission in life, is to just make my life mean something by giving something greater than myself back to the rest of society. And these were all people that were able to do that. And to this day, I have no idea why they wasted their time on me, what they saw in me. There were so many other people that they could have been mentoring. Why me? But I always feel driven to make their efforts worth the time and attention they gave me, and have their efforts pay off somehow. Even the ones that are no longer here. I don't believe in an afterlife, but I pretend that if they were looking down and could see me, I want them to be proud of what they helped make happen. And so I'm really in the other end of mentorship is not only the mentorship you receive, but it's the response or the alteration in you that it creates. And there's kind of a response to mentorship that changes you in the process as well, where it's not an obligation or even a sense of responsibility, or maybe a little bit responsibility, but it's a wanting to. I want to give back and make their efforts worth something. I get fulfilled by if I could become a really good peer or be successful at this business or become a good teacher or mental health professional. I want to do that, kind of an honor, to honor them. It's my way of giving back what I can. I received way more from them than I could ever give back. And so just if they've made me better at what I do and I can use that extra like skill set that I developed because of them to do quality work and produce excellence to the extent that I can, I want to do that. I'm driven to do that, to honor these people that gave of themselves like they did and took time out of their life to help provide that for me. So it's kind of a reciprocal. I'm really big on reciprocity. I tell my people all the time that whatever situation you're in, relationships, professional, what community, there should be a reciprocity. You should be getting something back for what you put in. It doesn't necessarily have to be equal, but it's like a seesaw. You want it to be balanced. You don't want you to be up here or the other person to be down here. You want a sense of balance and reciprocity and something coming back. And mentorship can kind of be one-sided at first, where they're doing all the giving and mentoring. But at some point, you want to reciprocate that. You want something to come back to them so that closes the circle and creates that healthy kind of circuit that is the final result of mentorship. And so I do notice that we're coming up in the hour. I think I've hit all of my major mentors. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. And I'm sure I didn't, because they're kind of all burned into my brain. I mean, they become a part of you. They become a part of your soul and who you are. I would not be, whatever you think about me or my personality, if you can see past all that and look at my strengths, I would not be the person that I am and have those strengths today without these mentors that I mentioned today on this podcast. And so I want to give all of them gratitude and thanks. I want to honor them as best I can. Some of them are departed. I talked about two of them yesterday, Dr. Middleton and Harvey Hansinger. And so if you have people in your life that are willing to mentor you, let them. Work with them, cooperate, collaborate with them. It will make you a better person. Make sure they're healthy mentors. It's not an abusive dynamic or anything like that. But if you're getting something positive out of it, if you're noticing growth and progress in yourself, if you're developing skills or strengths, it's probably a healthy mentor relationship. So take it as the gift that it is. Take full advantage of it. Use it to make yourself a better person, and then give back where you can. And I guess that's really mentorship in a nutshell. I don't know what else I could add to it. I would personally like to see, well, the other area mentor shows up with real briefly is men and the men's movement and the men's work that I do. Having healthy male mentors for younger men. There's something that only men can give to other men. Like Robert Bly and the people in the men's movement say all the time that only men can initiate other men. And I didn't touch on rites of passage today at all, so that may be a future episode. But I'd love a program where healthy, well-adjusted males that can be those positive role models, can mentor younger men, or maybe older gifted people can mentor. We do have a mentorship program in this organization I'm part of, which is developing. So that is kind of in the works of gifted mentorship. You know me, and I'd like to see all identities: autistic mentorship, gifted mentorship, healthy male mentorship. So I would like to be part of being a mentor someday and being able to give back the mentorship I received to other people in the role of a mentor to them, which I kind of do with my clients already, but that's more of like a equal partnership. But there is some mentoring involved in that work. So anyway, like men's mentor and mentoring and mentorship is something that really interests me greatly, that I would love to become more involved in. So those are my thoughts on mentorship today. And tomorrow, I guess I'll do friendship, unless I can get a guest. As always, you're invited to come on as a guest, or you can have the whole show. We can talk about whatever you want. I love letting people share what's on their mind with others. So I'll tell you what, let's do one more round of the Twitter, and I'll wrap it up here. Ooh, oh, look at this. It's Aurora season. Wow. They say sometimes you can see them from up here in Seattle. Look at that. Man, I don't know if I've ever seen them that gorgeous. I love that color green. Wow. I don't think there's going to be anything else on Twitter half as cool as this. I want this as a screensaver. I wonder where this is. Wow, that's just stunning. I could look at that all day. I love colored lights. Look at that. I love that camera effect, how it's shimmery. Wow. Okay, where was that? Denali National Park, Alaska. I will never understand why people with skeletons like this. Oh, Steven Crowder, more telling his pregnant wife she's not performing her wifely duties and saying, I will fuck you up. What? Steven? She's just saying it's on video. I would want to see the video because women interpret that all kind of different ways. I'm not saying she's wrong, but I would have to see the video. Still go out of their way to antagonize people, even if you somehow thought this was justified. I mean, it's not like these people are rashly thinking about this. They're reacting in the moment. This is their pattern of reaction and their limited coping skills that they have in the moment to express what's inside of them. Oh. Oh yeah, let's check for spaces. I like to do that too. Sometimes there's a cool space, I'll hop onto one. Gender ideology in kids, transgender, gender ideology in kids. Oh, was that rabbit hole space? Oh, he was advertising for this other guy. Okay. Yeah, no, I've had enough of transgender for a while. I don't need to sit on this space. Okay, let's check Satan. See, I just want to point out these are leather men. We were there at the beginning of the leather community, fighting for rights along with everybody else, and especially during the AIDS crisis. And now they're saying they don't want this at Pride. None of this should be at Pride. This is tasteful leather. I wouldn't have a problem with this at Pride. It's all the really kinky stuff, like the. Ooh, he's cute. This one driving. There's my daddy right there. It's the more kinky leather stuff that I think reflects negative. Oh, okay. So here's the Crowder video. I don't know if I want to play it, but I am curious. Oh, I didn't share screen. I'll tell you what, I'll bookmark it. Cause okay. All right, I guess that's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow, probably about the same time, about 4 tomorrow. If you're gifted twice exceptional, we're having a Zoom. I also have a Discord you can join. I posted on my Twitter earlier. I think it's pinned. And then Saturday is our dance party, 80s dance party. Come with your 80s gear if you want. Lights are always welcome. You can decorate your room with lights, dress however you want, or just come as you are with no lights and just dance with us, or even hang out. Some people come to just hang out and listen. You don't have to dance. There's no pressure. But get your 80s, get ready to go, whatever dances we did in the 80s. And come hang out with us on Saturday for the dance party. And the dance party is open to anybody. You don't have to just be gifted. Anybody can come and dance. So it's good exercise too. So, okay, I'll see you again tomorrow, and have a good rest of your night. And I don't know. Be well. Peace, Satan, peace.